Hello, guys. This is Dr. Anatole with a fun background behind me. I don't remember what that is. Maybe I will eventually remember. I think it's in Mexico. And we have Mike at the other end of the internet call.
Sure. Hello, everybody.
Hello, hello. So what should we talk about today? Or
Well, with the end of the well, I don't want to say when we record things, but let's pretend that our listeners actually understand that it takes time to record things and edit them before they actually end up on the channel. But it just so happens that Valentine's Day is generally approaching at the time that we're recording this. And so I wanted to talk about very generally how culture creates your reality in order, whether it be as a method of control or any number of other reasons, individual companies wanting to make money or any number of other things. Um, Valentine's Day is currently seen as a romantic slash business holiday, but that's not really how it started. So that's kind of my prompt to you.
it's always interesting how much fraud and historical precedent, desire for exploitation, desire for expressing our inner and outer personalities, emotions, how the whole thing weaves into something that becomes really, really complex while looking really simple on the surface. So talking of the Valentine's Day, on the surface, it's a nice holiday where people who love each other give each other gifts, come up with romantic dinners, enjoy quality time with each other, including in bed, etc. But if we start digging deep, we will discover a few interesting things. So you were telling to me before we started recording about the origin of the Valentine's Day. Maybe you should répéter so that we can écouter. So you can repeat
Sure.
so listen.
This information comes from NPR. So in theory, they had more of a chance to look into it than I did before saying it out loud. But in the 3rd century AD, the Emperor Claudius II of Rome executed 2 men, both named Valentine, on February 14th. And sometime later, the Catholic Church decided that these 2 men would be martyred, and that February 14th would then be known as St. Valentine's Day. But that, appreciation or that creation of a holiday for that is very different than what we're celebrating today.
Well, there are so many things that are different today, and their origin is something else. I mean, if we want to go very far and very briefly, if you read, for example, New Testament, you will see there's an evolution of how people saw, who. And also there's plenty of letters and writings that remain from those early days, and we know that there was an evolution, and there are many other things that were evolving. A lot of church holidays are replacing pagan holidays
That's
that
right.
were before. And by the way, the word pagan is a dirty word, but actually it's nothing like that. But this is beyond this video. I don't want to go into this. Besides the fact that I am not an expert on that in any way. So we have this Valentine's Day, and I mean, I know that sometime it got to be somewhere either in the 20th century or in the late 19th century, when people, particularly in America, decided to make money off something. Just like when you look at diamonds, diamonds do not have the same value as what is advertised. Their value is artificially maintained. So the same way, many holidays are, they've been commercialized. And what did they commercialize? Well, they commercialize desire of people to be in a loving relationship. It's a very natural thing natural way to live. It's nice to have, a wife or a husband, boyfriend, girlfriend, or just a friend who loves you and cares for you. It's really, really nice. And it's nice to celebrate romantic feelings. So on the surface, I think it's a great holiday. When you look down under it, you'll see that there's always commercial underpinnings. It always amazes me how, particularly in the United States, people really know how to sell things based on almost nothing. So in this case, there are Valentine Days day specials, sales, restaurants try to peddle you interesting food. Of course, this is the year of we're continuing the fun with the virus. So nothing is as simple as it used to be, and hopefully it's going to be only in this year. Next year it's going to be a lot simpler. So yeah, and if we look at the stuff that I always like to look at is look at the big question is what do you want, and are you getting what you want through the actions that you are pursuing? So romantic feeling is not the same thing as love. If you want to have a loving relationship, if you want to have a relationship, it does start with romantic feelings, that's for sure. But it's not the same thing. It needs to evolve to that. And it has a lot to do with understanding who you are and who your boyfriend, girlfriend, etc. is. And communication and primarily communication with yourself and being able to express what you feel honestly, and meeting a person who can handle that honesty, who can hear what you have to say. So there has to be some kind of level of compatibility. So this is just on the level of evolving this romantic feeling into something a bit more sturdy. And of course, you need to ask yourself a big question whether this romantic thing, romantic feeling, is something more than just explosion of hormones. Someone who has his or her eyes popping out with desire. It's just wonderful if you have desire. It gives you some idea of meaning of life, but you should ask yourself, does this desire really correspond to your deeper desire? Is this something that you want? Or is it something that is just dictated by the society and by your hormones and by the diet you have? I mean, if you have diet that makes you more aroused in a certain way and less peaceful, who is controlling you, the food or you? All of these questions are, may sound really somber, but they're real questions. We have lots of people who waste their life on stuff that doesn't really satisfy them.
Well, I think you just said several things that we could dive into if we really wanted to.
Yeah, go for it.
Whether it be the salt content of food, driving people to buy more food that has more salt content, or anything in terms of romance and love and the difference there. But I think
seafood, you eat certain kind of seafood, it will make you more have a twinkle in your eyes.
Sure, and if you eat more asparagus, you'll pee a very familiar smell. But in
Exactly.
any case, I think what we came into this video really wanting to talk about was how if culture does most of the job of creating the reality you live in, um, what we're looking to do and what some other people who may watch or engage with us want to do is create our own realities, whether for ourselves as individuals or with each other. If you want to talk about a romantic pairing who want to build a life together, we'll say. In either of those cases, you're talking about um, setting your own definition of what reality is, right?
In many, many ways, yes. I mean, to my current mind, everything comes through awareness. If you are not aware of how external things affect you, it will be difficult to find yourself in that situation. I mean, you can construct your reality all you want on some uninhabited island somewhere in the Pacific or something, but then you will be isolated from people who carry culture. So, for example, if you live here in New York State, well, let's call it East Coast of the United States, you're affected by people thinking and talking in a certain way. If you go to California or Utah or whatever, people there talk and think in somewhat different way. And if you move south
Right.
to Mexico, they think in even more. I was watching a video about Mexican City just this morning, and the guy on the video was talking about how Mexicans like dark humor and how they like to play with each other, how they make fun of each other, and it's quite different. A lot of that would be very politically incorrect in the United States, and and so this kind of thing creates a reality around you. There is certain kind of freedom you would feel in a place where you can express yourself in a certain way, and if you don't like that kind of expression, you will feel less freedom there. So how does that affect you? Well, it affects you in direct ways. If you want to create your own reality, well, you need to have enough awareness, number one, and number two, personal inner strength to basically say no to the external culture. And when you say that, you become automatically opposed to it, and this may not be what you want. Then you have to play a game where you pretend to be part of the culture while at the same time internally you don't, which is a kind of split personality situation. It can become split personality disorder, if you're not watching it carefully. So you would be very lucky if your inner reality that you're trying to construct fits nicely with the external reality. What happens if it doesn't? Then, it becomes an interesting situation.
Okay.
I'll let you respond.
Well, I don't really have much of a response to that.
I mean, in a way, I have kind of said everything. It's like, okay, you have your Valentine's Day. Fantastic. You can ask yourself a question. What is it in it for you? Well, if you're a young guy or a gal, well, why not express yourself hormonally? I want to have my hormonal explosion, which can easily manifest in a child, which creates a whole bunch of other interesting things that will happen in your life. Your romantic feelings will be drained in about a second when the child is born and starts screaming in the middle of the night every other night. Which is not to say that you shouldn't have children. You just need to be aware of what it entails. I remember there was this not an experiment, but a whole bunch of social workers started giving teenagers fake babies, and you carry this baby for a couple of days, and it screams all the time at all kind of weird times. You have to feed it, otherwise it screams even more. and that dramatically reduced teenage pregnancy, because kids realized that having a baby is not all great fun, and the baby will certainly love you, but they're not going to love you for you. They're going to love you because you are the ticket to their survival. Same thing, the hormones which give birth to all this poetry, romantic and otherwise, and all this, and Romeo and Juliet type of experiences at 15, which is prime teenage years, they serve the desire of the species to procreate. It's a very basic base instinct, and there's nothing wrong with it. But if your soul is in conflict with that instinct, you're going to have great fun. I mean, pain. Saying forward, if you want to go onto a spiritual path, you will inevitably get yourself in the same room with religion. What is religion? Well, at the beginning, religion was basically a group of people who were worshiping together in a similar way, in a similar house. So, for example, I don't know, choose any teacher and students around him or her, they form a religion, they form a church. So they have, a place where they gather, they eat, they talk, they worship, whatever that means. It might be just sitting in meditation, it might be singing some mantras or saying a few platitudes or not. It can be very serious or playful or whatever. But the bottom line of it is that they will have some kind of human arrangement, which can be legally somehow organized, but that is a secondary thing. So you have that situation, and what happens? You have external culture, and then you have an internal church culture. It becomes a culture of that particular group of people. And then they start evolving as a group, and they start looking, I don't want to say down, but let's say down on whatever happened before them. So for example, in all so-called Abrahamic religions, there were many gods who got subservient to one god. So basically, you have a situation where there are many, many gods, and then one god became stronger and more powerful than those gods. And eventually, those gods who were less powerful, they became angels and they became saints. So, for example, in one very famous church, there is one God, but then there is Trinity, which they say is one God, but actually there are three of them. And then you have a whole bunch of saints who are worshipped and prayed to, and they fulfill desires. In other words, they are gods too. We just don't call them gods. And I'm not trying to criticize this in one way or another whatsoever. I'm just saying that there's this evolution happening. And one may say that, hey, human beings need to have have a way to address many different forces of nature. So you have God of the sky, God of the water, Neptune, I don't know, God of marriage, Venus. It connects with astrology and with the planets, etc. What is all that? Well, it's all about multiple different expressions that human beings have, and all of them need to be brought into awareness, and you will have a meeting of these different priorities. This is what I call the conflict of authenticities. Well, it's not a conflict until it becomes a conflict. I just spat on my computer. I don't like that. Nice shining. So what happened with this Valentine's Day? Well, there was a saint that was, had some level of importance, and then his day got transformed into a holiday for romantic hormonal expression. Is it a good thing or a bad thing? It's just a thing. It's just how human consciousness evolves. Like right now, we have a situation where people would like to meet for Valentine's Day, and restaurants, many of them are closed. Well, let's assume they're closed because of the virus. And how do you celebrate in that situation? What is the romantic feeling when, I'm here and say if you're my girlfriend, which I'm not trying to imply anything, and you are, miles and miles away. So we have, nice situation where I'm going to say, oh, hello there. So lovely to talk to you. And you'll say, oh, Anatole, so lovely to talk to you. But the hormonal situation will not get expressed. How does that feel? It's wonderful, to talk to people at a distance. It's amazing that we can make this free video call. And 10, 15, 20 years ago, that wouldn't have been possible like this. But it's amazing. So this is what we see. How does that goes back to create your own reality? Well, all of us are creating our own reality within the constraints of the culture you're living. And the big thing is this. Number one, is the external culture conducive to your internal culture? I bet you that living in an ashram in India is a lot easier on your spiritual self than living in some dull, materialistic, conservative village somewhere in some weird place in the United States. And for a person who is conservative, it might be just the opposite. It would be just too weird to live in a place like, I don't know, Rishikesh in India, where all these yogis and meditators meditate and chant weird mantras, versus going to some really conservative church here in the United States. So that's one thing. And you should definitely go to a place where you're treated best. That constraint will be less if you go to a culture which is more permissive of the things that you want to pursue. So, for example, if you want to pursue a business, countries where businesses are favored would be better. So you might want to go where taxes are lower, etc. Same thing with spiritual things, same thing with family. For example, where I live is a good place to raise a family. If you want to have kids, here it's safe, and people know how to deal with kids. At the same time, you can say, people here are really fussy about safety, which is bullshit. There's no such thing as safety. And you might want to go to a place where people really know how to take care of children as a village, rather than as very fussy individual families. Same thing with the spiritual things and other pursuits. In some places, it will be much easier to get in touch with who you are. In other places, you might really express your artistic, which would be a different kind of self expression, artistic inner, what I'm trying to find, your artistic side of your personality. So, for example, people go for millennia, for hundreds of years, they've been going to Italy, because in Italy, you walk around these amazing buildings and amazing sculptures, and people speak an amazing language, rather than being in a place where practicalities rule and artistic expression is very, very secondary. I mean, you can look at this at literature. In places like Russia, if you're a poet, you will be able to publish, and people will read your poetry, and it will, fly off the shelves, probably to the tune of 100 times better than in the United States, where here people don't even know. Most people don't read poetry and are not interested in it. And and I don't know all the statistics. It doesn't matter what statistics are, where is better and where is worse. But it is definitely some places are better and some places are worse for expressing who you are. Ultimately, it all comes down to your own awareness and your own inner strength. So if you yes, it will be easier to express yourself artistically in Italy than in the United States. But if you're strong, you can basically completely ignore people around you and do whatever you want. And you can nowadays you can basically walk into into Rome on videos, and you can surround yourself with beautiful things in your house. So you can create an environment. External environment will be just amazing. I mean, people talk to me why I have rooms in my house painted in different colors, and that's part of it. I mean, I want to look at different colors. I don't want to look at dull colors that people tend to prefer around here. Things of that sort. And this all comes down to back to Valentine's Day, and that how you express yourself, what you favor, is depends on your culture and depends on you. So, in the US, no one gets surprised by the Valentine's Day. In Russia, lots of American holidays became part of Russian culture, especially for young people. They've never heard of Valentine's Day 25 years ago, 30 years ago. In India, I mean, I think that people do celebrate Valentine's Day, but it's kind of like an afterthought because they have plenty of other holidays that are way more fun than this. And regarding sales and stuff like that and romantic dinners, well, if you know how to bargain, you don't need to have a sale. You can make a sale by going to the right place and bargaining hard. I'll let you respond.
No, I think that is basically it.
Good enough?
Yeah.
You want to say goodbye?
Well, I'll just remind everybody that everybody watching that they could subscribe and hit the bell for notifications of when new videos come up, and really leave us some comments about what you'd like us to talk about, and you'll see that come up soon.
Bye, everybody.